What is up, Sleep Tribe? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Healthy Sleep Revolution podcast. I am your host, Dr. Magna Dasani, and it's been a while since I've been trying to get this woman on my podcast. So without further ado, introducing Dr. Jade Stolte. She is a chiropractor that the universe allowed me to cross paths with through another dear friend, and I'm so glad she's in my neck of the woods. We have been collaborating on patients. I just love her outlook on treating patients. She's also trained in, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Jade, cranial fascial therapy. Is that right?
That's correct.
She's nodding at me. So without further ado, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm grateful that you asked.
Oh my gosh, yes. I have been looking forward to this conversation forever. So for those that are new to our show or are just logging on, I know I tend to go down rabbit holes, but Dr. Jade and I think I'm so drawn to her is because of her outlook on treatment. She 100% believes, like I do, that if we can solve an issue without pharmaceutical help, I'm trying to put that the right way, that is the way to go. Because our body believes, I believe, and she believes, that our body knows what it needs to do to be able to heal itself. So we go down the holistic, naturopathic, empowering our body the way to allow to heal itself. And I've heard great things from the patients that are mutual patients, and I'm just so excited for this conversation. Let's jump in. How did you get drawn into chiropractic? Why chiropractic?
Oh, that's a really great question. So I didn't actually go back to chiropractic school until I was 37 years old, but I think it was twofold. My grandfather was a chiropractor, so I grew up living a very chiropractic lifestyle. We used non-medical, homeopathic, all natural things when we were sick. We let our fevers ride out. We let our bodies do, what they're meant to do. And then I found myself in my late 30s, burnt out. I had been in the corporate world for a long time, and I knew that I wanted to help people know that they could live a life trusting their body. I had taken prerequisites for nursing and thought, that just really isn't it. I'm not sure what it is, but that's not it. And I was up for a promotion at my job that I got, and I knew that I was going to turn it down. And so I knew I needed to really focus on what my passion was. So I started looking for options and realized that where I lived had a chiropractic school, and I applied without telling anyone. And I thought that I was going to get told, a lot of my credits were really old, so I thought I was going to get told no and to come back with some other things, and I got accepted, and the rest is history. But I
there
really
we go. The universe had a plan.
Yes, absolutely. The universe had a plan.
That's awesome. So let's delve into why chiropractic works. What is the basis? What is the background with the neurology of chiropractic? And for sleep especially, how does it affect the sympathetic overdrive that our bodies tend to be in when we're not getting enough sleep? So the sympathetic versus parasympathetic system dominance. Let's dive into that.
I think that that's a two-part answer. So the first part is, how does chiropractic work? And I think that the best example I could possibly ever give, as adults, we all have used a garden hose at some period of time, right? And I think if you've used a garden hose at some period of time, you have tried to turn it on and the water doesn't come out. And you go down and you try to find it. And if you're lucky, it's one of those big kinks that you can see, you unkink it, you go about your time. And if you're not lucky, it's one of those little ones that's somewhere along the way that takes, 5 or 10 minutes to find. And that's kind of what chiropractic is. So, your brain communicates through your body, through your spinal cord, everything that it needs to do to breathe. Obviously, the most important, your heart beats without thinking, all of those things. And if anything impedes on that communication, so much can be affected. And so what we do is we just remove the interference. We remove whatever the kink is that's in the hose so that your brain and your body can communicate and that it can do exactly what it was meant to do. One of the things I find is that exactly what you said, a lot of people are stuck in that parasympathetic or the sympathetic fight or flight, and we can't really move back and forth like we should. And a lot of that is because your body and your brain are not communicating, and your brain, I like to say your brain is on fire. It's like freaking out because it's not able to talk to your body the way that it needs to. So a lot of what we do as chiropractors is remove that interference so that the brain can have that really awesome communication. And one of the biggest things that we see with adjustments is exactly what you said, that you regulate back. So if you've been stuck in that sympathetic fight or flight, you regulate into that rest and relax, that parasympathetic. And what I like to tell my patients is we don't want to make it go away. If you walk out of my office and you see a bear in the street, you need to be able to run from it, but you don't want to be stuck in it. Your body needs to be able to have that time period where you can rest and enjoy and rejuvenate and all of those things. So the biggest thing we do is exactly that, is to move people in and out to be able to regulate back and forth with our nervous systems.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. My kids have seen a chiropractor since they were little, and the fear always has been, or maybe the lack of knowledge, that infants too, can benefit from this. Is that correct?
Oh my gosh. Yes. About, I'd say 70%, 70% of my practice is infants and children, with a huge portion of that being infants. And I think that parents, you don't know what you don't know, right? Especially first-time parents. So that's a lot of the conversation we have, is that, first of all, infant and child chiropractic looks totally different than adult chiropractic. So we're not having like these big, massive pops and cracks and things like that. Really what we're doing is using very gentle movement to get that same feedback into the brain. But I always tell my parents of infants, the two biggest side effects of chiropractic in infants is big sleeps and big poops, because we're moving them back and forth, out of that parasympathetic, sympathetic. So a baby that's screaming all the time and can't sleep and is really having a hard time usually has a really big nap and sleep, has a really big poop, and is just like a rag doll by the time they're done, because they're so relaxed. So safe. It's really amazing to me when families come in and have that exact understanding that it's this harmful thing and you're going to break my baby in half, and then they become true believers because they see what it does. We've got a baby that's sleeping. Maybe they've got their mouth closed now. We're not snoring anymore. We're having all these wonderful things. And then then it's like, I get calls all the time. My baby hasn't pooped in a week. Can I come in? Stuff like that. Or, we're having a rough sleep pattern again. Can you, it's a wonderful thing to watch.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing of note too, and I did not know this, it's like, sleep and dentists being able to help. It's like chiropractors can do so much more. My oldest daughter, until we figured out our chiropractor could help us, suffered from ear infections, like constant, nonstop. And I know you can impact that in a big way too, right?
Absolutely.
Let's delve into that.
Yeah.
We probably need antibiotics.
Yeah. I think the goal is always to avoid antibiotics if we possibly can, right? There's a time and a place for it. Don't want to say that they're not worth anything, but if we can do things to help your body fight and get through something like that on its own, it ends up stronger on the other side for sure. Yes, ear infections are another huge one. First of all, the way that babies and children's eustachian tubes are shaped make it difficult if we have any inflammation or clogging of any sort or anything like that, make it very difficult for them to drain. And I know you see this a lot as a dentist with kiddos that come in, and we've got, a lot of other things going on that cause even more issues. There are so many things that we can do to help. There's some things we can do with the ears, because you can actually adjust ears. A lot of people don't realize that. And then a lot of things in the cervical spine and neck can also affect it as well. So we see great results. And also we do some natural things to help while we're trying to get through that process as well. I know that this is not chiropractic, but one of the things that I recommend a lot is mullein garlic for kiddos. We put drops in the ear, and it kind of helps while we're trying to get through all of those things as well, rather than using antibiotics.
Yeah, anything natural that is non-invasive is always a welcome remedy, especially for me. Natural segue, while we're along these lines, is how does bodywork support, when we have common mutual patients for palatal expansion? So 2 parts to this, for palatal expansion and then also for tongue ties. So I'll let you take the lead. Whatever route you want to address first, but I know that's what we work on together for a lot of patients. So I'd love for you to delve into that. and also what parents can expect. What does that look like?
Okay, absolutely. So I'd say let's start. You said palate expansion first, so let's start there. Well, first of all, I'm sure you've talked about this on your show before, but I think a lot of people don't realize what the fascial system is in the body and kind of how that correlates or how that works. So we're all really familiar with muscles and how those work, and bones, and we're taught all those things, but fascia is something that's not really discussed widely. So we all really don't know. And the best example I give parents is if you're pulling a piece of skin off of a chicken breast, that white stringy stuff in between is that fascia. You mentioned cranial fascial therapy. In that class, they talk about how really we wouldn't hold together well at all if we didn't have fascia. If we just had our bones and our muscles, our bodies really wouldn't hold their shape. We really wouldn't be who we are without the fascial system. And what can happen through lots of things in life, through being born specifically, you can get fascial strains or restrictions where that connective tissue doesn't really move the way that you want it to, and then can cause kind of strain throughout the body. And then when you have things going on in your mouth, your tongue is the main fascial center in your body, it can really cause strains and restrictions really from head to toe. Usually what we see is something starting in the mouth, going through the abdomen and going down to one leg or the other. And so the whole body is affected by that narrow high palate, by that tongue, being tied to the floor of the mouth. And so what I do is really remove those adhesions and restrictions as much as I can. For palate expansion specifically, when we think about the changes that are happening in the maxilla, and if you're doing the mandible, both, they are affecting the entire cranium. Your whole brain is wrapped around a giant piece of fascia, and then you have a piece that exits through your skull and goes around your whole spinal cord, and then you've got it all over your body. So when we're making this massive expansion or even slight expansion in our maxilla or mandible that affects our whole skull, it can pull fascia even if we don't have any strains or restrictions when we're starting. We definitely can have some as we go through the process. So what I help is removing those and making sure that that system stays nice and loose and open so that we can get as much growth as possible when we're doing palate expansion. Because if you're trying to grow something and something is constantly pulling on it, you don't really get the amount of results that you could if you were also working that system as well. And then for tongue ties, it's a little bit different. Tongue ties, you almost always have that fascial strain and restriction that is affecting your body. And I know because you have adult patients that you work with. By the time we get to adulthood and we have that restriction, those people have chronic headaches and tension in their bodies and so many things that they have felt for years that they didn't realize had anything to do with their mouth at all.
And TMJ issues, right?
Say that again.
TMJ issues.
Oh, yes, absolutely. TMJ issues, 100%. I can speak to my own experience on that as a tongue-tied person who has had massive TMJ issues, massive sleep issues, breathing issues, all of those things. And so what we find is as we remove that, we do make some progress in our airway and our breathing, in the relaxation. And when you get in to do your surgery, you tell me, do you notice a difference when you see people who have had body work versus people who have not? When you're going in, do you notice a difference in what their mouth looks like?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. The ease with which the tissue releases is different. I tell other doctors that I train the same thing. It's not, just because you have something that can cut, it's all going to release the same. And to that note, I was thinking about it when you were talking about expansion for listeners that are listening or docs that are listening, because we do have a ton of docs that tune in as well. When we're expanding patients and that expansion isn't symmetrical, there are times we'll see that one side expands more than another. Think about it. Is there an invisible string or thread that's holding back one side? You got to send them for body work or send them back if they are already seeing somebody. So those are things that, like, once you start to look at it, it's like those little dots start to connect. It's so fascinating.
It is. And the other thing about expansion too, that I don't think a lot of people realize is that there is can be, not always, but can be some neurological things that happen too. We can have, our nervous system can be greatly affected. And so that goes back to the chiropractic portion too. we want to really keep that nervous system nice and clean and communicating as we're having these big effects that can be drawing, issues into the nervous system. And then we also support in the recovery, because as we're recovering from tongue tie and we go through all the phases of healing, we notice that there are fascial strains and restrictions that can come back up again. And so we support through the healing process as well, for tongue tie. And then we obviously support through palate expansion for the whole time that, that the palate is being moved.
Yeah, sure. I think it's important. People don't realize that. When I'm talking to patients, I was like, you got to go back and see your other doctor every time you see me, because it's not as simple as, oh, we're going to do something. And it's, especially when we're doing appliances like the ALF for, the light forces, we want to make sure they have the support with you as well.
Absolutely.
What can patients and parents expect when, I guess it's going to be a whole range, but let's start with the infants. What can parents expect by way of what should those appointments look like? What is the child, I know the answer, but is the child going to be uncomfortable? Just walk us through that, and then we'll get to adults as well.
So I think it's really, let me start by saying, I think it's really important that you choose a provider that resonates with you and somebody that's going to take the time to talk to you and make sure that you're comfortable. So I can speak to what happens in my office. And for infants specifically, our first appointment is quite long, and we spend a lot of time talking to the parents and making sure that they understand everything that's going to happen, that they're comfortable with what's going to happen. And here we don't do discomfort. So if we're doing something on the table and it's making the little one uncomfortable, then we reroute. We make funny noises like and faces and get toys out. If it's something that seems uncomfortable, we kind of reroute and do it a different way. Sometimes we'll hand to mom or dad to make sure that they can console. I work on babies while they're breastfeeding sometimes. The one time that kind of talk about if mom and dad are comfortable, because everything in my office is based on consent. So in my eyes, if the infant is yelling at me because they're mad, because they're uncomfortable, they're not consenting to what I'm doing. The older kids, it's an ask. Can I do this? But with infants, it's a lot of just listening to body language. And then the only time that we are okay with them crying is when we get in their mouth, because it's like 20 seconds of when they're a month old or 2 months old, all they want to do is suck on your finger, and you're doing everything else except letting them suck on your finger. And when they're older than that, they just kind of don't like the taste of the glove and they don't want you in there. But again, we talk about, what I'd like to do is we're going to be about 20 seconds in the mouth. They might cry through that, but I promise you, I pick them up after. I tell them they're brave and they were so strong and, they did a great job and all of those things. Because ultimately, I don't want a little one to cry at me every time they come in. I don't want them to see my face and start wailing because what I do is scary or uncomfortable. We want this to be a place that people enjoy coming. Parents feel good. They feel good when they leave. The baby sleeps and poops and just, is happy and all of those things. So it's important that you choose a provider that makes you feel comfortable. And that should be the experience that you receive with your infant when they come in, or your toddler. With toddlers, it's a lot of rolling around on the floor and playing all the time.
Yeah, because it is a place of healing. So that's why they're there. That's what your goal is for these patients. So I completely get
Absolutely.
it. Because we mentioned breastfeeding moms, you do provide pre and postnatal care as well, right? Because it actually begins before then. But yeah, talk to me a little bit about that.
So prenatal chiropractic, a lot of that, and I do a lot of CFT on pregnant women as well. I've had really amazingly wonderful results with that. But if anybody has been pregnant, they know all the changes your body goes through, and it really taxes everything. So chiropractic and CFT is all about, during prenatal time, making the womb the most inviting, comfortable, lovely place it possibly can be by really addressing the body and giving as much balance and openness as you can. So we work on the ligaments of the uterus. We work on the pelvis to make sure that it's nice and even, or full body as well, but that's our main focus, is really making sure baby has as much room as possible. But when we're talking about tongue tie and all of that as well, it's very important that what mom's putting in her body is, that we're doing the vitamins, that we're, really thoughtful about what we're putting in our body, that we're trying to stay as low stress as possible, because all of those things affect baby as they're growing. And I took a really cool epigenetics course once where we talked a lot about that, and how, what tongue tie is, and how, you don't go through the correct process that kills the cells and then they're left and all of that. So all of those things are very important, but, prenatal chiropractic is very much based on the same thing, keeping mom's nervous system nice and open, keeping that uterus a really lovely place to be.
Yeah, I believe it should be like something that should be offered to every mom. I didn't know it existed when I was pregnant with both my girls, and I was like, man, I cheated. And especially postnatal, right? Moms are overwhelmed. I remember that feeling. God, I love my babies, but there's so much going on with your body. And then my older daughter, well, now I know they both had tongue ties. My kids checked off every box. And there were times, I'm not afraid to admit it, I felt like I was a failure. I wasn't able to provide for my kids what I thought they needed. And a lot of it came from, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yep.
I wasn't where I needed to be able to give her that. So let's dive into how and why that is so important, because like you said, babies are able to eat and poop better. Mom feels more supported. Let's dive into that.
This is my favorite part. So let me start saying, mom care is my passion. And I think I fulfill that through my work with infants. But, as I think you hit it, as a mom, we go through a lot. I had a mom in my office yesterday that this is her second little one, and cried and just said, I don't even like him sometimes. And he's like 3 weeks old. And I looked her in the eyes and just said, it's normal. It's okay. You can love him and not like him sometimes too, when you're not getting any sleep. And, she's going through all the things. This is her second little one with a tongue tie. They don't come with a manual. And I think as moms, we take on the burden and we think that there's something wrong with us. And, one of the things we talk about when people come in our office, especially when we're talking about the breastfeeding journey specifically, every mom comes in and says, my nipple's too big, my boob's too small, my flow's too heavy, my flow's too light. They don't like this side because I've done something wrong. I'm holding them wrong on this, all the things. And I'd say in our office, over 90% of the time, that's not it at all. Your flow's not too heavy, your flow's not too light, your nipple's not too big, none of those things. We have tension in our mouth, or something baby has tension in their mouth, or something going on in their body that is affecting that relationship. And I think the other thing that we don't do very well in this country specifically is talk about how hard it is. I think in the age of social media, we all put out there these lovely pictures and beautiful things, and we talk about how awesome it is. And we don't talk about the nights where we just sit up and cry because our baby won't go to sleep, or I've tried to latch her for 20 minutes and, it was just a no-go, or, all those terrible, deep, hard feelings that we feel the pressure of, this should be awesome and amazing and gorgeous because that's what we see all of the time. And that's really just not the truth. It's hard work. My patients hear me say, I have a 12-year-old daughter and our breastfeeding journey was very hard, but I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. She's the same thing, typical tongue tie, like all the things. But it's hard. And being a parent is my patients are used to me saying, it's the most amazing job I've ever been given and the hardest job I've ever been given, all wrapped into one. And it doesn't stop past infancy. I have a teenager now, and that's a whole other ballgame. But I think that having a good support system and a team built around you is important. Lactation is important. Another common misconception, everybody's journey is not breastfeeding. A common misconception is you can't get any help unless you're breastfeeding, and that lactation is only for that. That's not true at all. They're there to help you feed your baby, however you choose to do so. And I think that's hard because some parents quit the breastfeeding journey early, especially when they're tongue-tied, because they think, I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, and baby is just not going to eat. And then bottle feeding also doesn't go super well. And then they just feel like I have nobody to turn to because a lot of them don't know chiropractic. They would never know to go to a dentist, or, they think that they can't go to lactation because they don't breastfeed, so they're not going to get the support. But I think admitting out loud that it's hard and it doesn't have to be beautiful, or it can be beautiful and also very hard at the same time. And taking a lot of pressure and expectation off of yourself of what it should look like, and just really leaning into what it does look like, and getting whatever support you need is incredibly important.
Right. And, while we're on this topic, for the moms that are listening in, it's very important to remember that your body's been through a lot to bring this human being into the world. So it does not automatically mean that, yes, that little one is probably the center of everything right now. We got to make sure they're eating, they're healthy, they're pooping, they're sleeping. But your body is also in sympathetic overdrive. You had all those hormones decide to go whichever way they wanted to go. Whether you had a C-section or a vaginal birth, it doesn't matter. That's a lot that gets taken out of your body too. Absolutely. You're not sleeping because you're 100% focused on the baby. You're still healing. The baby is waking up every 10 minutes to eat, or at least it felt like with mine. You got to be kind to yourself. And that postnatal care for yourself to get your body the help it needs to get back to where it needs to be is, oh my gosh, I wish I knew all this before. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly important. And once the baby gets here, everybody's focused on the baby and nobody's focused on mom. And I think that moms really do need to do things to focus on themselves during that time. And you're right, to get their nervous system back in check, to get their body back in check, and to really remember, this is a controversial way to say this, but a baby is basically a parasite in your body. It is living off of you for the 9 months of your life. Most amazing parasite ever on the face of the earth, but you are growing something in your body and ultimately giving up pieces and parts of yourself to get them here. And then after birth is very, very hard. And then after they get here, we all know if we've had a child, we all know what it's like after as well. And you're right, it doesn't matter whether it was a C-section or a vaginal birth, a epidural or not, or really what your birth looked like. Your body needs time to heal, and it needs help to get out of that fight or flight sympathetic and be able to regulate back and forth, because you're living on no sleep. Your body's been totally hijacked and has gone through a lot of really hard things. And if you're breastfeeding, you're still continuing to give up a lot of yourself in order to be able to care for your little one. If you're bottle feeding, you are as well. You're still not sleeping. You're still, all of those things. So yes, 100% having care after birth is incredibly important.
And remember to ask for help. You may or may not have family. We didn't have any family here when my little ones were born, but ask for help. There's more people that are willing to support and provide that support than we even think is possible. There's amazing doctors like Dr. Jade. I know our office is open to supporting our patients with, we talk nutrition sometimes. When I see a mom bringing in a newborn, and it's never just about releasing that baby. It's like, how are you doing? Are you okay? Are you hanging in there? Is there anything we can support you with? And sometimes that's all that we need, just knowing that somebody else cares. So for moms that are listening, please ask for help. There's always somebody that is going to be available to you. I love the rabbit holes we go down.
We actually do a parent support group here on Wednesday nights for that new parent support group, for that reason, to connect people who maybe don't have other relationships or support systems, just have other people to talk to that are going through the same thing. Sometimes that's all it takes, is another parent that's kind of experiencing or has experienced what you're going through, just to confirm that you're still sane and everything's okay. It is.
Yeah, I love it. We'll post your contact information in the show notes for those that might be interested in looking more into this. I think that's a fabulous service that you're providing for these new moms, new parents. Let's continue our conversation with what support would look like for an adult that is maybe undergoing TMJ issues or help with their sleep issues. What do those appointments look like, or what can parents or patients expect for that?
Yeah, great question. So I love to do cranial fascial therapy on adults as well. I think it's really helpful overall globally And I love if we have TMJ issues, things like that with CFT, you see some amazing, incredible results. So for adults, I'd say for CFT, you would want to have appointments that are about at least 30 minutes long. Some opt for longer, 45 minutes or an hour, really just to get the kind of movement that you need to. CFT is really interesting because everybody's experience is different. Some people lay still as a log on the table and that's their whole experience and they feel amazingly wonderful and get awesome unwinds and results. And some people are really dynamic. They're moving and things like that. And every person is different. But when you come in, you are agreed to come in, get on the table, and we kind of just figure out where your strain patterns are. So same as we were talking about with palate expansion or tongue tie, when we've got something going on in TMJ, usually there is other involved in your neck, in your upper traps and shoulders, something that is contributing and moving along. So we work through that. And then if patients are comfortable, I don't like even saying patients, if clients are comfortable, then we will also do an adjustment really to get that nervous system nice and calm and solidify all of the body work that we've done as well. The thing is adults look very similar to kiddos. So you're just dealing with a larger body with more layers to unwind, but it's really honestly still the same thing. We see a lot of the same patterns in people, but it's still the same kind of work.
Yeah, in fact, I do believe adults need to be seen more regularly, not that kids don't, but because they've accumulated so many years of strain and compensations, which
Yep.
I know you're working harder to kind of help them unwind and get past. So this is amazing stuff. As we start to wrap up, where can our listeners find you? Your social media links. We'll post your address and email, your website in the show notes, but I'd love for you to share your social media links.
Perfect. So my website, social media links are also on there. But probably the best one is on Instagram, and we're just pure.chiropractic. Super simple.
Easy. There we go.
Yep.
Easy peasy. Top 3 tips for parents or patients that you would get. What are your top 3 tips?
Top 3 tips. Oh, that's a tough one. Okay. Top 3 tips, I would say get adjustments regularly. Get adjustments or body work regularly. I think I really do find it incredibly important. It doesn't matter who, as long as you're having it done. It's like getting your teeth cleaned. It's something that needs to happen regularly. Get good sleep because your body needs to regenerate and rejuvenate throughout the night. So getting good sleep every night. And if we're having trouble with sleeping, having that addressed, a lot of what you do, Dr. Dasani, making sure it gets checked. If you're sleeping good hours and you're not waking up feeling rested, there's a reason, and we need to figure out what it is. And we very rarely think about our airway and how that affects our sleep. We think about all the other things, pillows. I get those questions all the time. Pillows, mattresses, mattress cover, like all the things. And there are definitely places for that. But if you're waking up and not feeling rested pretty frequently, you need to see somebody like Dr. Dasani for sure. So I say regular adjustments, wonderful sleep, and eating well, I think is also incredible. What you put into your body is very, very important. And nobody's perfect. And I think if you strive for perfection in this world, it's hard and you fall short. But mostly putting incredibly good things in your body is very important. That's your body is really literally made up from the things that you put into it. And so 3 would be regular adjustments and body work, good sleep. If you're not getting good sleep, getting help from someone like you, and then what you're putting into your body.
That's amazing. And I love what you said. Just start somewhere. Things don't wait for it to be perfect, for the time, for the place, for whatever else that matters to be perfect. Just start.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come chat with us. I know we've been trying to get this together for a while. For our listeners, like promised, I will have her bio, I will have her website, social media handles, everything in the show notes. So go follow her. I know there's tons of great content, tons of stuff to learn as well. And you know somebody that needs to hear this. So share this episode, share her information, and I will see everybody next time.